What's up, chat? You already know what the fuck's up. It's another installment of Tier List Thursdays. We're gonna keep a theme going with video games this week. We're gonna be ranking Dark Souls 3 bosses. Now, first and foremost, Dark Souls 3 spoilers. If you haven't played this game, it's almost been a decade at this point. Get your life together. Real quick, gonna go over my criteria. First and foremost, and most important, how is fighting the boss? Is the boss fun, challenging, engaging, whatever it's trying to go for? Second of all, does the boss have cool lore? If a boss has got cool lore, that makes him way cooler, makes even a lame fight, if there's good lore, I can derive some enjoyment from that. It makes it to where the fight isn't, a complete waste of time. And I guess for the third category, just miscellaneous if it's applicable. Does the arena either suck or does it elevate the fight? Does it have really sick music? Is there something else going on during the fight that can add or potentially remove from the enjoyment levels? But without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's start off with tutorial boss, Udix Gundyr. This is definitely the best first boss in the entire series. Out of every FromSoft game, really. I think Udix is a really, really good tutorial boss, and one thing that sets Dark Souls 3 above all the games that came before it is just how fluid all of the animations are. And this really applies with the humanoid bosses. Whenever you're fighting Udix, it could be your first time fighting him, and you're going to have a natural, intuitive sense as to what he's going to do during the fight. Just because of, you can tell the way he begins to move his body. You know how human anatomy works, so you know the only possible things Udix can do. That really applies for every humanoid fight in this game. All of them are really good. I'm looking at the list right now. I don't think any of the humanoid fights in this game are bad by any stretch of the definition. But let's go ahead. We'll put Udix, we'll put him in A tier. It's going to be a low A tier, though, and the only thing that really brings him down, I don't know how well you can see this image, but in the art forum, it shows him during his second phase, whenever he develops the Pus of Man. And all that stuff I said about, his movements being naturally intuitive, and you can already tell what he's trying to go for, or what he's about to do, instantly disappears when phase 2 starts, because he develops this giant black blob, huge arm, and it stops becoming a humanoid fight and becomes a monster fight. There's also a slight issue with the camera during this phase, where, the Pus of Man takes up so much space that the camera can't always show all of it, but that's honestly an issue that every single FromSoft game has had, and probably will continue to have, until they stop making these games. But yeah, Udix, great fight, good fight. I really enjoy it. Another really good early game fight, Vort. Vort's a great fight. I wouldn't quite say it's as good as Udix though. It's still really good. I'm gonna put it in A tier right below him. Vort suffers the same thing that pretty much every big quadrupedal monster fight does in the series, and that's if you hug him, basically if you just stay attached to his crotch, or, in Vort's case, stay glued to his rear, there's really not much he can do. You can just kind of keep slapping away at him, and he doesn't put up much of a fight. But he's still a fun and engaging fight. He's still a nice, relatively easy, but still very challenging fight for an early game boss, and I think that's what Vort and Udix should be. They should be difficult, they should be challenging, obviously, but they're not whipping anything out. that, you know, is going to really catch a new player by surprise. He also, you know, he is actually, he's the first introduction to, like, the frostbite mechanic in this game, which is neat, which is cool. It doesn't get utilized a ton in this game, and then it gets utilized an absolute shit ton in Elden Ring. But you know, he's our first ever interaction with the frostbite status in the series, which is pretty cool. Also, you can transpose his soul and get his big old warhammer. I think my second ever playthrough of the game, I did a strength build, and I used that hammer for a lot of it. Really good, really fun. Another thing, incredible music. Vort has a phenomenal track, way better than it has any right to be. However, I do kind of want to take away points from it, because Vort's second phase, the music really ramps up, and this big old, like, acapella chorus kicks in, and it is amazing. It gets my blood pumping every single time I hear it. However, if you know what you're doing, the fight ends basically the second that part of the song kicks in. So you don't really get to hear it all too often, but still, Vort has an incredible track. Fun fight, good fight. Unfortunately, we're gonna hit sort of the first of the series of slog fights in Dark Souls 3. Curse Rock Greatwood sucks. Well, I wouldn't know if I wouldn't say it sucks. D tier though. It's not a great fight. It's not fun. So after two very fun, engaging fights, you get this one, and the lore of it's pretty cool. It's this giant. There are these great woods that, like, you know, undead would pray to, and it would, and like Dark Souls lore, like if you get cursed or curses or something like that, you can't ever get rid of them. They're permanent. You just have to, push it onto something else, pretty much. That's how you get rid of curses. You have to have some other poor sap get stuck with it. And the Great Wood was one of these that all of the citizens of the undead settlement put all of the, you know, wished away all their curses onto, and it became this big, disgusting tree monster with these pus-filled sacks covering it. And that sounds disgusting, because it is. It's a gross fight. It's so... oh, God. It sucks to fight every single time. You can't... and it's kind of a puzzle fight, which tend to suck in the series, because you can't just smack at it with your sword and then kill it. You have to smack at its pus-filled sacks until they bust and explode. And that's how you deal damage to the boss. And the entire arena takes place in this big, giant, like, cathedral area. And there are a bunch of other undeads that fill it, and they kind of just get in the way and are annoying. They're not challenging. They're undead, you know, unless you're using a dagger as your main weapon for some reason. It takes like 2 hits to kill them, and it's Dark Souls 3. Stamina is practically not a resource you have to worry about, so you can take care of them immediately, but if you don't, it just makes the fight more annoying. It just slows things down. They just slow things down. They just make this already not fun fight less enjoyable. Halfway through the fight, you know, once you've destroyed 2 or 3 of the gross, disgusting pus sacks, it'll shatter the floor, and you drop down in this underground little natural cave area, which looks cool. It's a very scenic fight. And then its main giant, basically nutsack right at its crotch, bursts open, and this big, gross, sickly white hand pops out. And with that thing, you can attack that like an old boss and deal damage like you normally would, but you still have to attack the sacks. It's not fun. It's not engaging. It's just smack at the sacks while this giant lumbering tree moves around. It's got this one move that I absolutely hate, where it causes, you know, more gross, disgusting pus sacks to fall from its head, and they create this little, like, it's like a tank ability from a video game. It's like an area control, like an area denial move. It just surrounds them in this little, like, it surrounds him with the pus. God, this boss is so fucking gross. And you just have to back away. You just can't engage in him anymore, and it sucks. It makes it bogs it down even more. Greatwood sucks. This fight's not enjoyable. The only good thing about it is that the arena's pretty cool, and when you beat him, you get to transpose boss souls. So, and technically, he is an optional boss. You don't have to deal with him. You know, if you know you're not going to use any of the boss soul items, you don't have to deal with him. But, you know, chances are you are, so you do have to deal with it. Sucks. Here we got another lame, unengaging fight, Crystal Sage. Crystal Sage actually used to give me a lot of problems when I was first playing this game. So the Crystal Sage's gimmick is that, you know, it's obviously a spellcaster. He's gonna shoot, I think it's a she actually. She shoots her little crystal spells at you. It's a Big Hat Logan reference because everything in Dark Souls 3 has to be a Dark Souls 1 reference. And, you know, you run up to her, you smack her a few times, and then she teleports away, and then she reappears somewhere, and you wash, rinse, repeat for the first phase. None of her spells ever really pose a threat. They're all very telegraphed, very easy to dodge. But in her second phase, whenever she teleports away and reappears, a bunch of clones teleport with her, and the way you can tell them apart is that the real Crystal Sage has purple spells, but the clones have the usual blue color that crystal sorceries have. And you just have to hit the clones once and they disappear. But if you're not careful during that second phase, in a vacuum, the Crystal Sage's spells are very easy, non-threatening. But when there's like 8 of them in this small arena, they can very quickly overwhelm you and just, you know, throw a combination of spells that are very difficult, potentially impossible to completely dodge. It really just becomes like a DPS check, in a sense. It's either, you know, you can take things to a slow, grinding halt, and you can destroy all of the clones until only the real one remains. And then you can run up to her and hit her a few times before she teleports away, and you get to do that over and over again. Or you can just, you know, fuck it, we ball, hope you find the real one quickly as possible, and smack at her before she teleports away and all the clones disappear. It's not really difficult in, like, the fun way that, like, some of the other bosses are in the series. If anything, it's, like, annoying. It's, like, tedious. She's not fun to fight. It's another D tier. I will say, I will put it above Crystal, or I'll put Crystal Sage above Greatwood, just because this boss doesn't make my skin crawl anytime I think or talk about it. But enjoyment level, God, they're both terrible. And up next we have Deacons of the Deep. 3 in a row. Guys, I promise this game's good. Just all the bad bosses are at the start. Deacons of the Deep sucks as well. So the gimmick for this fight is you walk into the room and there are just a metric shit ton of deacons. And, you know, you start swinging away wildly at them. Nothing happens. But you'll notice that one of the deacons has, like, this red aura to them. And whenever you hit them, the health bar, you know, the real health bar takes damage. The boss health bar. You kill that one, and then this red orb shoots up into the sky, and then eventually descends down on a different deacon. And it's basically just a game of finds the... to quote Cow Chop, find the colored one and kill them. And you do this over and over again until the boss reaches about 50% health. And then the real Deacon of the Deep comes out, and then you just bum rush him, and you kill him instantly, because he's a pushover and poses no threat. If you bring an alluring skull into this fight, God, I'm looking for the words for it. It's pathetic. It just becomes pathetic because you just distract all the mobs, and so you just There's literally nothing stopping you from just focusing on either the, Aura Deacon or the real Deacon. And it's easy, it's quick, once you know what you're doing, you can probably kill him in under a minute. It's not enjoyable, though. It's not fun. It sucks. Thankfully, though, most of the bad bosses are done with. We got Abyss Watchers, the first S tier of the tier list. Abyss Watchers is great. It's incredible. They're a bunch of Artorias cosplayers, which is sick. Artorias reference, let's go. Excuse me. And the two phases to this fight. It's your first Lord of Cinder. And Jesus Christ, the Abyss Watchers does not let down. This is the first real difficulty spike as far as the bosses go, because Eudix and Vort aren't too hard. They're challenging, they're still engaging, but they're nothing ridiculous. Crystal Sage, Curse Rotted, and Deacons of the E Deep are all pushovers. Absolute waste of time. But Abyss Watchers is the first boss that you really have to learn. You really have to figure out how to engage with them if you want to get out of that fight alive. You can't just rush at them and then hopefully trade hits, because they'll mow you down. And it's one of the few instances in the series where they do a gank fight properly. Because in the first phase, you start off fighting the single Abyss Watcher, but then in this room filled with the corpses of the Legion of the Abyss Watchers, one of them rises up and starts to attack you. And then you have to deal with two of them. And Jesus Christ, one of them was already hard enough, now you gotta deal with two of them. But after a few seconds, a third one rises from the grave, and at first it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, how the hell am I supposed to beat three of these fuckers? When all of a sudden, that third Abyss Watcher starts attacking the other two. Now granted, it's still technically hostile. If he swings his big old fuck-off sword and it hits you, you're gonna take damage, and you can kill him. But, you have this brief moment of helplessness, despair, of having to deal with two of these assholes, when all of a sudden a third one shows up, and he's kind of on your side. It's a very sick, it's an awesome moment. It takes what looks like it's about to be a gank fight into basically a 2v2, which is something that doesn't really happen naturally in the series unless you summon. But if you summon, you're not actually playing the game, or whatever fucking elitist gatekeepers tell you. But once you beat the first phase, you get into a second phase, and all of the Lords of Cinder have a second phase. The Abyss Watcher's the only one with a second health bar. Spoiler. I already said a spoiler warning. And as the picture shows, they become emboldened by the flame. They become embered, like you do, like the player can. Which is something that I love about all the Lord of Cinder fights. Excuse me. They all have a second phase where they become embered, like a reflection of the player, which is really cool. It's a nice little touch I love. It goes back to being a very fun, engaging, honest 1v1. Only now the Abyss Watcher's a little more aggressive, and all of their attacks have, the secondary, fire effect. And, it doesn't pose that much of a threat. If you're dodging the moves properly, you'll dodge through, the sword attack and the flames at the same time, which makes you feel like a complete badass. Only move that he really has that I find myself struggling with, that I kind of, is more of a skill issue on my end, but I still, every time I fight him, feel like it's a little unfair. They have this move where they'll charge, they'll stab their blade to the ground and charge forward, and then they leave this streak of flames that then shoot up and erupt into a wall of fire. Every time I'm fighting him, that one feels a little hard to dodge and also get a chance to punish the Abyss Watcher, but whatever. That's one move that I find annoying out of a moveset that I think is overall very well designed. Abyss Watchers S tier. I look forward to him every single playthrough. Dark Souls 3, the real Dark Souls starts here. Once you get to Abyss Watchers, that's when this game really takes off. Kind of, almost. Unfortunately, right after Abyss Watchers is High Lord Wolnir, who sucks. Such a cool design. He's this giant fuck-off skeleton trapped in, like, this chalice that's holding the Abyss. And, like, he has, like, these cool little darkness spells. It perfectly fits my aesthetic. Unfortunately, the fight sucks. It's a worse, less enjoyable version of Curse-Rotted Greatwood, where you don't attack Wolnir himself. You can barely see it in this picture, but he's got his bling, he's got his drip, he's got these giant gold bracelets on his arms. And you swing at those, you smack at those, and after a few hits, they break, and that causes a giant chunk of Wolnir's health to disappear. And once you've shattered all three, he dies. And it's not fun. It's not engaging. Thankfully, you know, before the fight even starts, you can get a few swings in and potentially break one of the bracelets, so that way you only have to worry about actually taking out two of them. But it's just... It's another Dark Souls 3 fight where you're not really engaging in the fight. You're waiting for Wolnir to do one or two moves where he just, you know, lets his arms sit on the ground because he's tired, I guess. And then you smack it as his bracelet until it shatters. It's an easy fight. It's a boring fight. Which is honestly the worst thing these bosses can do. I'll take a bullshit, unfair, stupid fight over a boring one any day of the week. Because at least with the bullshit fight, you know, you can feel some sense of pride or something like that after you beat them. You know, you feel like you accomplished something. You don't get anything out of beating Wolnir. You don't get anything out of beating Deacons of the Deep. It's a slog. It's something you have to do to get to the better fights. Wolnir sucks. He's so cool. I wish he was good. And also, you have to go through the Catacombs of Karthus in order to get to him, and that's probably my second least favorite area in the entire game. Dark Souls 3 has when it's good, it's really fucking good. It's the best in the series, but God, it has some bad moments. But we've got another better fight up next. We got Old Demon King. Old Demon King's alright. He's a B tier. He's an okay fight. His lore is incredible. You find him in the Smoldering Lake, hidden beneath the ruins of Karthus. And the arena is filled with the corpses of demons. And as you go throughout this game, God, there's like 3 other demons in the entire game that you fight. There's the one on top of the bridge, who's not on the tier list, who's not really a boss fight, technically. You got the demon princes in the second DLC, and I'm trying to think if you fight a single other demon in the entire game, but you don't. Because, you know, by the time of Dark Souls 3, the world has gone through the Age of Fire, relinking the flame cycle probably thousands of times. The world's pretty much over. The world is actively ending in Dark Souls 3. It really, you know, Dark Souls 1, you know, you're kind of at the beginning of this new age. You're in, like, unprecedented times. But in Dark Souls 3, you really get the feeling of this has been going on for countless years, and it has, every single cycle has taken its toll on the world, and things are getting worse and shittier. And this is a great fight because up until the DLC, the Old Demon King was the last demon. He was the last of his kind. You find him in a room filled with the corpses of his brethren. Because, you know, the Bed of Chaos got vanquished in Dark Souls 1. That's the source of all demonkind. And once that was gone, you know, it was no more demons were being made. The ones that existed were the ones that existed. And you really get that feeling whenever you're fighting the Old Demon King. You feel like you were fighting this entity that's the last of its race, the last of its kind. And it's fun, you know. He's swinging his big old fuck off hammer. Slow, things are pretty well telegraphed. Nothing really too hard to fight. And, you know, he whips out his his, like, I guess it would be pyromancies. I don't know. I choose to believe that, like, the fire sage demon, he's not casting pyromancies. He's whipping out flame sorceries. But that's not that's like headcanon. That's not in the source text. But you know, and then he gets like the second phase where he starts, you know, like he's spamming his spells. He has this big old ring of fire attack, which honestly I still feel is kind of bullshit. It's kind of like that one attack from Elden Beast in Elden Ring, where he summons like the giant like sigils that you have to jump over. It feels like an attack you should be able to jump over, but you can't. So you just have to. It's really tight. It's a really tight timing. This is me bitching about my lack of skill. I don't like that attack. I think I've maybe dodged it successfully 3 times in the hundreds of hours I've put into this game. But, you know, all of his spells are really easy to avoid. You know, he has this attack where he summons, like, meteors from the sky. But you can just stand behind one of the piles of demon corpses and not even worry about it. My favorite thing about this fight, though, is the ending. Once you get the old Demon King to about 10-20% health, he, you know, gives off this one last final gambit. And he causes this big old explosion, unleashes all of his power at once. And, you know, after he does that, he loses, like, the orange-red, like, fiery hue to him, and he just becomes old and gray. And clearly that attack took everything out of him. And he still technically has attacks after this, but they're pathetic. You have to actively try to be hit by them. You know, all of a sudden his hammer, which he was once swinging with ease, becomes too heavy for him. And, you know, he's using it like a walking stick, more or less. And it's just one of those moments where, just one of those great moments of storytelling in the boss's actions and movements themselves that these games are so good at. But old Demon King, he's a nice solid B tier. Not necessarily a fight I look forward to every playthrough, but you know, it's a fight I never walk away, you know, feeling disappointed by. Speaking of disappointments, though, up next we got Yorm. Yorm is a weird case. Yorm is one of those big old grand spectacle fights that these games love so much. And it took them like 5 games before they figured it out with Elden Ring. Before, I really liked Yorm. I was a defender of this fight. The gimmick for this fight is you grab the Storm Ruler from his arena, because a cool Demon Souls reference. And you don't actually fight Yorm. You use the weapon art, you charge up the Storm Ruler, and then you send a big old wave of air at him. And it does a shit ton of damage to him. And you just basically hit him like 6 times and he dies. And it's a cool fight. It is awesome. It is sick as hell to fight Yorm like that. Especially if you do, oh god, I can't remember his name. I think it's Siegward. I think it's Siegward in Dark Souls 3. If you do Siegward's questline, and then it's you and him, both the Storm Rulers, whooping Yorm's ass. And it's sick. It's a grand, awesome spectacle fight. But as a fight, it's the same. It commits the same sin that all the ones in D tier and Wolnir commit, and it's boring. It's not fun. It's a slog. But before the defense was. But the spectacle is so sick. But then with Elden Ring, with the God-devouring serpent and Prekard. Oh god, what's his title? Praetor, I think. Praetor Rykard. I don't remember. I'm a fraud. That's it kind of does the same thing Yorm does, where you use a specific weapon that has like this cool badass wind effect, and it's a awesome sick spectacle fight, but it's still engaging in an actual boss fight where Yorm isn't. And you know, it's hard to defend him after that, because clearly FromSoft knows how to do that. They just didn't with Yorm. I'm still going to put Yorm in C tier, mostly just because the tier's empty, and because I still enjoy it way more than Crystal Sage, Greatwood, and Deacons. I look forward to fighting Yorm, because it's fun, it's cool. I've never fought Yorm without the Storm Ruler. That's never happening. That's a fight that takes like 15 minutes every single attempt. Fuck that. You'll never catch me doing that shit. But you know, Yorm, not as high on that fight as I used to be. Up next we got Pontiff Sullivan. Now Pontiff Sullivan, here's a little fun DS3 fun fact. Pontiff Sullivan was originally going to be the final boss of this game, because lore-wise, he kind of started everything. Like, this game, Dark Souls 3 only happens because Pontiff Sullivan decides, you know, to be, ooh, I'm evil fella. He's the reason why he was the one whispering in the Twin Prince's ears to not link the fire, which is the reason why your character even comes back to life. He was the one who convinced Aldrich to become this weird, gross blob man who devoured the gods. I mean, the Dancer and Vort are his knights. He's pretty much, like I said, he's the reason Dark Souls 3 happens. And he was originally going to be the final boss because of it. But he's not. He's like the halfway, midway point fight. And he is sick. He is a great, fun fight. I think he's up there with Abyss Watchers as kind of like almost a difficulty spike. Because Pontiff is way harder than everything that comes before him. I'll go ahead and move Pontiff up to high A tier. He's got the cool, sick dual swords. One with the profaned flame, the other with his little Anor Londo sorcery. All of his attacks, fun, engaging. His attacks feel fair. He doesn't really have anything that's he doesn't have any like bullshit fuck off attacks. Oddly enough, though, his second phase is easier than his first. In his second phase, he like sprouts these cool spectral shadow wings, and then he summons his fucking stands. That's pretty much what he does. He creates like a purple clone of himself that's practically his stands, and all that thing does is just telegraph his attacks even more, making it even easier to avoid and dodge him. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of lackluster. What should be the harder part of the fight actually becomes easier. And also, you can parry Pontiff. That's something that was technically introduced in Dark Souls 1 with Gwyn, but only really became a thing in Dark Souls 3, being able to parry bosses. I didn't mention it before because it's not too important. You can parry the Crystal Sage. She has like a rapier attack that you're going to see maybe once every 20 playthroughs. You can parry that for some fucking reason, because the Crystal Sage needed to be easier and more pathetic. You can parry the Abyss Watchers, although they're not a ton of parryable attacks. It is a little bit difficult to do. Pontiff, unfortunately, falls into the same camp as Gwyn, where if you know how to parry him, he becomes pathetic. He becomes a pushover, and that's mostly what's keeping him out of S tier. Just the fact that if you take the time to, you can make this fight boring, like you can with the rest of these. Now, granted, it's a little more engaging because parrying is still a difficult skill, but if you're good at it, this boss, he kind of sucks. But yeah, Pontiff's great. He's still one of those fights that I get to every time I play through. Every time I kind of dread, not because the boss fight sucks, but because, this guy's difficult. How many times is it going to take me to beat him? Like, this is something I'm going to have to lock in for. I'm going to have to gamer lane for this one. But yeah, Pontiff, he's a fun fight. Up next, we got Aldrich, who, honestly, gets less fun every time I fight him. The main thing that really sucks, there are two things with Aldrich that really suck. I'm gonna put him. God, I'm gonna put him. He goes in D tier. D tier. D tier. There are two things with Aldrich that really, really drag him down. First and most importantly, it's what he's doing in his art right here. It's his goddamn arrow attack. Aldrich has his attack where he takes his staff and he shoots like a spectral arrow from it, and then like this storm of arrows follows you. In his first phase, before he embers, it's whatever, it lasts like a second or two, it's really easy to dodge. But in his second phase, it becomes so fucking persistent. It follows you for what feels like an hour. And whenever he does an attack, you can't engage with him. You just have to run around and dodge the arrows while also dodging whatever other attack he's throwing at you. And it sucks. It's bullshit. It drags you out of the fun. It forces you to take a step back and no longer engage in the fight. And that's probably the worst thing these bosses can do, is force you to unengage. But not in a tactical retreat way, but I can't do anything right now. I have to wait for the boss's turn to be over. Because I don't want to play a fucking turn-based strategy. If I want to do that, I'd go back and I'd play fucking Pokemon. I'd play Fire Emblem. I want to play Dark Souls. I want to play an action RPG. I want to play this fun, tight, responsive, skill-based game. I don't want to fucking watch Aldrich use his move, go, okay, it's his turn, wait for him to be over, so then I can have my turn. Fuck that. The other thing he does, he does the same thing the Crystal Sage does, and that makes that fight such a slog. You run up to him, you attack him a few times, he casts his spells, and after you hit him too many times, he teleports away. And then you have to run around to whatever corner of the room he teleports to, and you just do that over and over again. And it's not fun to constantly chase down the boss. That I don't want to have to do that. The boss should be doing that. It should be the other way around. I should be running away with my tail tucked between my legs, and the boss should be chasing me down, whooping my ass. It shouldn't be the other way around. I should not have to feel like I'm forcing the boss to engage with me. That's stupid. But yeah, Aldrich, he sucks. He's not a fun fight. Dancer of the Boreal Valley. Dancer's another really, really good fight. In fact, Dancer... Yeah, Dancer's the best fight in the base game. Dancer is so good. She's like a mix between like a bestial quadrupedal fight, but also like a big humanoid fight, because that's all she is. Her and Vort, they're both big ol' humans, but Vort's just, I don't know, Pontiff's influence kind of, I don't know, he decided to get on all fours and it just kind of warped his body. And the Dancer's like, she's all hunched over like a monster, but she's just a really, really tall woman. But she's got these two fucking sick blades that kind of mimic the Pontiff. She's got one with flame, one with like dark sorcery. She's very difficult. She's very punishing. If you don't, but not in an unfair way. It's one of those things where if you get hit because it's your fault, she's gonna whoop your ass. But at no point, with one small exception, does the Dancer really do anything that, you know, isn't your fault. Like, it's a skill issue. If you're losing to Dancer, it's because you're doing something wrong. And that's how these fights should be. A good Dark Souls fight should be one where the only reason you're ever taking damage, you're ever getting hit, is because you fucked up. And Dancer, unfortunately, there's one exception to that. She has this one move where, like, if you're smacking her butt, because... like Vort, that's the best way to deal with her. If you're able to just kind of hug her rear and smack at her behind, a lot of her attacks will just kind of miss you. Except for one, she has this sort of like snappy like overhead where she like swings her blade above her head and slams it into the ground right behind her. And that move is so fast and snappy that it's almost unfair to expect a person to be able to react to it. There's not really a telegraph to it, she just kind of does it. And if you're not, if you're not in the gamer state, if you're not fucking Ultra Instinct, you're gonna get hit by it, and it's annoying, and it sucks, and that can kind of cause things to spiral out of control for you, especially if you panic. But that's really the only negative thing I have to say about Dancer. She's tough, she's a hard fight. I don't mean to brag, but I did beat her first time I ever fought her. Sorry I had to drop that flex on y'all real quick. But she's she's fun. She's a fight I look forward to every single time. The only thing that does suck about her is that you get teleported to her boss arena after you defeat your third Lord of Cinder, which is usually Aldrich, but, you know, if you're a crazy person, you can fight Aldrich before Yorm. If you hate, you know, Irithyll Dungeon that much, which is fair. That worst area probably in the entire series. But you get teleported to her, but you don't get healed. I mean, you get embered, like you do after you beat every single boss, but you don't get your Estus back, so if Aldrich whooped your ass, and you're, you know, a Dark Souls player, so you're probably overly prideful and have a need to prove yourself. So if you don't rest at a bonfire before you fight Dancer, you'll probably be in an Estus deficit, which might make you lose a fight that you otherwise shouldn't. But that's not Dancer's fault. That's not a knock against the boss. But yeah, no, Dancer's great. Dancer's amazing. Up next is Osiris the Consumed King. I'm gonna put him in C tier. I'm gonna put him below Yorm. So I've been doing another Dark Souls 3 playthrough, and I beat Osiris very recently. And that fight, I don't know, it's kind of up there with Aldrich for me, and the capacity that it gets worse every time I fight him. Like, first time I fought Osiris, I had fun, I thought it was enjoyable. But every time I've played him, just something happens that makes me not enjoy it. He's like a large bestial boss. He looks like he's ripped straight out of Bloodborne. And like most bosses in Bloodborne, if you just run up to him and you hug his crotch, a lot of his attacks miss you, and you can just kind of smack away until he falls over dead. But he's... So he does have a neat little gimmick during the fight. It's not really a gimmick, it's just a detail. Where he's cradling this child that, you know, you can't really tell if he actually exists. You hear crying and wailing throughout the boss fight, but I don't know, it's never really confirmed whether or not this child that, you know, is motivating him, that, you know, he's striving to protect, actually exists. Which is cool, which is neat. I like it when the series does that. When I like how much ambiguity is in this series. How very rarely things are told you flat out. I like it. It makes the story and elements of the game more engaging and fun. Makes it more interesting, really. But I don't know. He has his little crystal spells that I think inflict. Yeah, I think they inflict curse on you, which is a Seath reference because this entire fight's a Seath reference. And that's, I don't know. I don't like that. I don't enjoy that. I don't think it's fun. I think it's overly punishing. It's, well, where, you know, Dark Souls, it's a punishing but fair game. For the most part, you know, dying is still your fault. But I don't know, just having attacks that inflict damage and fucking give you curse, that just feels a little cruel. It's like, I don't know. But he's, like I said, Osiris, he gets less fun every time I fight him. He has this one attack, especially in his second phase, you can kind of get into a loop where you're not really allowed to engage with him all that much. Like, he'll do, like, this big swooping attack, where, like, he jumps up in the air and kind of glides down at you. And depending on your placement when he does it, when the attack's over, he's probably so far away from you that even if you sprint at him, by the time you get to him, you're either out of stamina or he's about to do his next attack. And he can just kind of do that over and over again. And he has a similar attack where he just charges forward. And that one feels sometimes a little too quick, to be fair. Like, I found myself getting hit by that a lot the last time I fought him. And it's just the same thing, like, he lunges so far forward that depending on where you are in the arena, by the time you catch up to him, when the attack's over, you might not get a chance to fight him. And that sucks. That's boring. Once again, it's just a move where it's like, okay, you don't get to do anything, it's Osiris' turn. And I feel like bosses shouldn't really have attacks where, you know, they just get to do it and there's nothing you can do about it. Every move a boss does should have a window for you, however brief, for you to be able to play the game, for you to be able to attack them. even if it's just a single attack, you know, that makes it more fun. It makes it feel like the boss is it's always engaging. There's always an opportunity for you to be doing something. But those moments where it's just, you know, oh, it's my turn, I get to do my thing, and you get to watch it, or, you know, die. I don't like that. And Osiris, I don't know, it feels like he has more of those attacks every single time I refight him. But hey, I mean, when you kill him, you can get the Moonlight Greatsword. So, shout out to him, you know, salute. If he's what's, you know, if he gives you the Moonlight Greatsword, that's a plus, honestly. But honestly, the best thing about Osiris is that he's mandatory to get to the next boss. Fucking Champion of Gundyr. I lied. Champion's the best fight in base game. Oh my god. So, Udix Gundyr, A tier. I sung his praises about how his first phase is really good. It's a great introduction. It's a great tutorial. Everything about the boss's movements, you know, just him being a humanoid telegraphs what he's gonna do. But, you know, then he gets his Pus of Man, and it's a different fight, and it's less fun. What if you got rid of the Pus of Man and made his second phase just a more aggressive version of his humanoid self? Oh, well, what happens is you get fucking peak. You get amazing. You get amazement. Champion of Gundyr is fucking awesome. He's everything that makes Udix Gundyr great, but without the downsides. He is a faster, stronger, more fitting version of himself at the point that you fight him. Excuse me. Oh god. Excuse me. He doesn't get that stupid bullshit Pus of Man. He's just... Look, man. These games are best when you're fighting big armored humanoids. It's just a fact, you know. Dark Souls 2 did it a bit too much, but the best bosses in the series are always the ones that at some fundamental level are on the same footing as you, because that allows for them to be more fun, more engaging. It's, you know, fighting a big fuck off dragon is cool, but you can only smack away at a dragon so much before it's just, you know, I'm spamming R1 against this big beast. When you're fighting a human, it feels like, you know, there's just a... Oh God, what... I'm searching for the words. You know, it feels like you're fighting someone on the same footing as you. And, that's a lot more engaging, that's a lot more interesting, and it just allows for the designers to do more, because, you know, as I mentioned, you can always tell what Champion Gundyr is going to do, because his animations are so fluid and so well designed that he moves like a person, he moves like a human, and so whenever, you know, he can whip out some move you've never seen before, but you could dodge it first try, because, you know, you understand. I'm just repeating all the shit I said for Udix. Anyways, fucking, I don't know, Champion of Gundyr's great. He's great. I could sing his praises all day, but I'm not going to because I don't have all day. Up next, we got another badass, armored humanoid. We got Dragon Slayer Armor. Now, Dragon Slayer Armor is a boss that has grown on me a lot. The first time I fought him, he was weirdly a roadblock for me. After beating Pontiff in 3 tries, Dancer on my first try, and a lot of these other bosses on like first or second try, Dragon Slayer Armor, I was stuck on him for a while. And the main reason why is he's got this big ass shield, and for him, it is actually a shield. If your weapon swing or spell collides with the Dragon Slayer Armor's shield, he doesn't take any damage. His shield isn't just for show, like, you know, maybe other bosses in the past. Which, you know, makes it a little more interesting, because you can't just, you know, swing wildly and just hope to hit him wherever. You have to actually make sure you're attacking away from his big-ass fuck-off shield, which can be a little hard sometimes, because, Jesus Christ, that shield's fucking big. The other thing about him that kind of sucks, though, is his second phase, when they're God, what are they called? Like the butterfly pilgrims. If the fight takes too long, they start to, like, shoot, like, little tiny projectiles and fucking laser beams at you, which sucks shit because you're not focused on the butterfly pilgrims. You're focused on fucking the Dragon Slayer armor, so you don't see them. So you don't know that attack's coming until, oops, I just got fucking blasted by a goddamn Kamehameha. But besides that, Dragon Slayer armor, I think he's definitely one of the better humanoid fights in the series. His attacks are very, they're well telegraphed, but still, you know, challenging to dodge. Mainly the real thing is that he doesn't really do anything wrong. Because at its level, I feel like Dark Souls 3 is that perfect blend of fast aggressiveness of Bloodborne, while still keeping, like, you know, the slower, more methodical elements of the Dark Souls series. Yeah, it's a happy medium ground. And so the game is always engaging to a certain level because you can always be at least so aggressive. You can always engage in it to a degree, unless, you know, bosses decide, no, you don't get to engage anymore. And the Dragon Slayer armor doesn't really have any moments like that. So as long as, you know, the boss isn't fucking something up, they're gonna be fun. They're just gonna be fun to fight. Like, you know, I have the bottom tier titled, I'd rather be playing Dark Souls 2. Yeah, funny little haha shit on Dark Souls 2 joke. But I'm gonna be real with you. I think I would rather fight basically every single boss in this game over one of the better bosses in Dark Souls 2. Just because on a fundamental level, Dark Souls 3 is more fun to play than Dark Souls 2. But, I don't know. I don't have a ton to say about Dragon Slayer armor right now. He goes in high B. Oh, nah, he goes in A tier. He goes in A tier, right above Eudix. Put him below Pontiff, though. Because at the end of the day, cool armored knight, as long as they're not doing something stupid or fucking something up, it's going to be a fun fight. It's going to be engaging. Up next, we got the Twin Princes, who I think are really fun. I enjoy the Twin Princes. This is one of those bosses that a lot of people struggle with. I, thankfully, have never had a problem with the Twin Princes before. So the gimmick for these guys is, for first phase, you fight Lorien, the older brother, and he's a pretty standard, you know, big ol' humanoid, kind of. Well, yeah, he's a big ol' humanoid. He just can't move his legs. But the way he gets around that is he teleports around. But as long as you're using the lock-on, that's never an issue because the camera will just immediately snap to wherever he teleports. So you always know where he is. And, you know, I just spent however long shitting on Aldrich and the Crystal Sage, two bosses who teleport around. But they suck because they teleport around and then you have to chase them down. Lorien will teleport and then still, like, chase you down to attack you. Like, he doesn't teleport to the opposite corner of you and then shoot his annoying little fucking spells at you. He's still a humanoid. He still just has a big fuck-off sword. So if he wants to hit you, he still has to be close enough to swing his sword at you. So even though he's teleporting around, he's not disengaging from you and being passive. He's still trying to engage with you the same way you are, assuming you're doing a melee build, which you should be. That's the best way to play the games. But, you know, yeah, whittle down his health bar, and then the younger brother, Lothric, joins in on the fight, and he resurrects Lorien. And he just, you know, Lorien begins to quite literally backpack his younger brother. And the gimmick for this fight is that, for the second phase, is Lothric will resurrect Lorien infinitely many times. He will, every time you kill Lorien, who now has significantly less health than he did in the first phase, Lothric brings him back. But while Lothric is resurrecting him, he's completely vulnerable. He doesn't have his big old brother protect him anymore, so you're free to just run in and smack the shit out of him until he resurrects Lorien with this giant, then you have to back up because his resurrection spell creates this giant shockwave of, like, divine magic that does a fuck ton of damage. But that becomes the new secret for the boss. You just fight Lorien over and over. You just keep killing Lorien, and then you use the opportunity to attack Lothric. And usually it'll only take like 2 maybe 3 attempts or times killing Lorien before you kill Lothric. However, I will say this: once the second phase starts, it does kind of fall into the same trap that Aldrich and Crystal Sage do, where they teleport around and shoot spells at you, because Lothric, shitty little loser he is, feeble-bodied dumbass, he shoots spells. He can't swing a sword like his cool Chad older brother. He has to shoot his little magic at you. And there will be times where the Twin Princes are just teleporting around, and Lothric's just shooting spells at you, and you just have to chase him down, and you kind of get removed from actually being able to fight the boss for a second. He does have a few spells that are really fucking difficult to dodge, or while also trying to, get a chance to attack him. They just have some spells where it's like, oh, yeah, no, you just get to take a step back. You don't get to fight him this time. But one really fun, engaging thing about the fight is that, Lothric is physically on Lorien's back. And so, he's not only vulnerable when Lorien's dead. If you swing at Lothric, if you swing at Lorien's back, you can still hit Lothric. So feasibly, you could win the fight without reducing Lorien's health down to 0 a second time. Which is cool, which is fun. It's just, a nice little detail about the fight. Jesus Christ, I've been flapping my gums for a fucking hour already. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I've got to say about the Twin Princes. I think they go... I'm gonna put them right below... no, they go right... fuck, I don't know where to put them. I'll put them right above Eudix. I still think I enjoy the Dragon Slayer armor more. But Twin Prince is still a great, fun fight. Up next, we got the final boss of the whole game. We got the Soul of Cinder. So, this is a really good fight. Soul of Cinder, he's got 2 phases. In his first phase, he swaps between multiple, forms of combat. It's basically, the whole thing's a giant callback to the entire series, like all of Dark Souls 3 has been. But it feels less like, cheap, nostalgia bait, and it's more fitting. It makes sense thematically, because the Soul of Cinder is the embodiment of the flame itself. It is the manifestation of the desire to, link the first flame once again. And it is the culmination of every single soul that has gone into fueling this fire. And so it's, there's, I think, 4 different forms. It's got its usual default one, just basic straight sword, moveset. It's got one where it's using sorceries, one where it's using a scimitar and pyromancies, and which has got the fucking ninja flip from Dark Souls 1, which is always so fun and sick to see. It's got one where it uses a spear and miracles. I think those are all 4 of its forms. And the sorceries one's a little less fun to engage with and deal with, because it's using spells. It doesn't want to get up to you and smack you with a weapon. It's trying to stay back and shoot spells at you. Which for the most part is still pretty easy to avoid, but still, it's less fun than the other forms. But its second phase, he gets a second health bar, and spoilers, I already put it at the end, and you're a fucking hour in. But I really mean it. If you have not played Dark Souls 1, don't listen to the rest of this video. Fucking come back here later. Go play Dark Souls 1, goddammit, and Dark Souls 3. But during its second phase, it gets a second health bar, and its moveset begins to heavily mimic Gwyn's from the first game. And, I mentioned a little miscellaneous thing that I've only really brought up once or twice throughout the entire tier list, or miscellaneous category. But honestly, the best part about this entire goddamn fucking fight is the music, especially in the second phase. Now, the music in this fight is great because the music in every Dark Souls fight is fucking amazing. But during the second phase, once the Soul Ascender basically just becomes Gwyn 2.0, its theme, like, you hear the fucking plin plin plon of Gwyn's theme, and as the fight goes on, it slows down from this giant, epic, bombastic fight, or the, grand orchestrated, fight music, and it slows down to this more piano-centric, not ballad, but it takes up that mournful, regretful feeling that, Gwyn's theme embodied so well, and every single time I hear it, it gives me fucking goosebumps. And, the second fight really feels like what Gwyn's fight in Dark Souls 1 should have been. He doesn't have any moves that are bullshit and feel unfair. If he hits you, it does a fuck ton of damage, but if you get hit, it's your fault, He's got that big 5-hit combo that's sick as hell, with a huge range and will probably kill you unless you have a shit ton of vigor. But, if you get hit by it, it's your fault, because he fucking holds his sword up like a baseball bat and takes 20 seconds before he starts to swing it, giving you plenty of time to run away. But, yeah, Soul Ascender, he's great. Definitely the best final boss in the series. Look at that, Dark Souls 3. You got the best first boss and the best last boss. Soul Ascender, I'm putting him right below Dancer. Because, unfortunately, that Sorcerer moveset really fucking sucks to fight. It sucks. Speaking of sucks, Ancient Wyvern's the fucking worst. This isn't a boss fight. This isn't a boss. Like, there are puzzle fights, like High Lord Wolnir or Yorm, where, it's like, oh, this isn't a fight in the conventional sense. The Ancient Wyvern is literally not a fight. You run past it, run through some enemies, you fucking just run through a level, and then you drop on its head and kill it. It's not a boss fight. It fucking sucks. I never enjoy fighting this thing. It's the only good thing I can say about it is that it's free souls, and it opens up the area for you to fight the next boss, the Nameless King. Whoo, baby. Whoo, baby. Oh my god. Now, normally, the Nameless King, I would put this easy top tier, best fight in the game. First phase fucking sucks. The King of Storms, that fight sucks. A lot of these fights can have, moments where the camera's kind of shitty. The King of Storms is the opposite, where you'll get a brief moment of clarity and stability, and then you're right back to not knowing what the fuck is going on with that goddamn camera. The first phase, you fight the Nameless King atop this, I don't know what the name... It's not a dragon, technically. It's like the only that kind of dragon that shows up in the series where it has, like, like bird feathers. I don't know, whatever. You fucking smack at its head a few times until it dies, and you get to fight the real fucking fight. The Nameless King. Oh, so fucking sick. Probably the coolest, second coolest lore, out of the entire series. The Nameless King. So in Dark Souls 1, you go to Anor Londo, you go to the land of the gods, and you meet Guinevere, Gwyn's daughter, you meet Gwendolyn, Gwyn's son, but there are hints, there are like ruined statues of, clearly belonging to a third child, and there are like item descriptions that mentioned, Gwyn had a firstborn son, whose name was stricken from the annals of history and was disowned. And here he fucking is, He's very briefly mentioned in Dark Souls 1, not mentioned at all in Dark Souls 2, because that game might as well exist in its own fucking universe. And in Dark Souls 3, you go to you find this super secret, optional, hidden area, and, he's this game's, like, optional super boss, easily the hardest fight in the base game. And, you're fucking confronted with the Nameless King, and it's never stated outright, but we all know it's Gwyn's firstborn. which lore-wise is so fucking cool. And this man lives up to his goddamn name. This dude, this fucking fight, God, this one took me forever to fucking beat the first time I fought him. He's, I mean, he's a pretty standard, you know, humanoid fight. He's got a spear instead of like a sword, but you don't really notice a difference besides him having a little bit more range. He's got a few like lightning spells like his father, but none of them are like, they're not like, you know, spells in the capacity that the Crystal Sage or Aldrich or like the sorcerer version of the Soul Ascender does, where they run away and they shoot them at you and it's annoying and tedious. They're spells, but they function like a normal physical attack would, where he casts it, you dodge it, and then you get a chance to fight him. Because the Nameless King does not let up. He does not give you a moment to just hang back and, you know, do your own thing. This man wants to whoop your fucking ass. And he casts these spells like he would, you know, like it's just a slightly different way of swinging his big, you know, cross spear and beating your ass with it. So yeah, he's casting spells, but they're effectively just, you know, regular old physical melee attacks for him. One thing, you know, one neat little thing about this fight that makes him slightly more difficult, he's left-handed. Now, most bosses in the series are right-handed, but bosses like the Soul of Cinder and the Nameless King are left-handed. And the reason why that makes them slightly more difficult is because, you know, whenever you're dodging an attack, like if you're in melee range with like a humanoid like this, whenever you dodge them, you want to swing to their right. You want to swing through their attack. And so you'll get used to doing that to your right, you know. Or I'm sorry, you'll get used to doing that to your left, to the boss's right. But with the Nameless King, if you try to do that, you're just you're rolling with the swing, you know, you're rolling with the attack. So you could, like, if you time it slightly too early, you're still going to get hit because, you know, you thought you're moving away from it, but no, that attack was following you the entire time. So it's like a small little mental thing that you have to make sure you're doing that you got to correct yourself on. Makes it, you know, a little bit more difficult. But Nameless King's great. Nameless King's awesome. If the King of Storms wasn't such a dog shit, first phase, he'd easily be the best fight in the base game. But that's all the base game bosses ranked. You know, we got a few stinkers, but it's a lot of S and A tiers because goddamn it, this game just kind of figured it out. When this game, once it's done getting all of its fucking poop from a butt out of its system, it's nothing but peak. Moving on to the DLCs, we got the Champion Gravetender. So, there are two stages to this fight. There's like an NPC fight, which is boring and lame and not fun. And then you fight a big ol' fuck-off wolf that you've already fought like twice, just exploring the areas in the DLC. Whatever. I mean, I don't know, man. That's whatever. It's whatever. It's boring. It's the greatest sin of one of these fights can be. It's just boring. But it's not actively unenjoyable like, you know, D tier and Dark Souls 2 tier might be. But next we got Sister Frida, and that's an S tier. That's an S tier. A 3-phased boss fight with 3 goddamn health bars. Phase 1, you fight Sister Frida. And, you know, not too hard. She's kind of easy, really. She's got her scythe and her little frost spells. She's got this move where, like, she steps back and becomes invisible. And then she'll jump to one side or the other and, like, attack you. But you can always tell where she is, because if you look carefully at the ground, you can see, you know, like the snow on the floor, like, kick up in the direction of where she jumped to. And I think you can also just see, like, physically see her land. Like, you can see, like, you know, the snow, like, you know, picking up from the impact of her landing. So yeah, she becomes invisible, but you still know where she is. Like, if you're engaged, if you're paying attention, she's never going to catch you by surprise, which is really awesome. Second phase, you fight her and Father Ariandel. And, you know, while this is going on, Frida is, like, you know, hanging back, you know, occasionally throwing spells at you while Father Ariandel is going batshit crazy. You know, you gotta be careful because Frida can heal Ariandel. But it's one of those few, like, 2v1 fights that doesn't feel bullshit and, like, awful to get through. Because Frida is pretty passive. She's passive enough to where you can focus on Father Ariandel and not have to constantly be worried about her breathing down your neck. And if you summon a Gale for this fight, you know, just makes that part a lot easier. Just splits the attention. It just becomes a 1v1 with Father Ariandel, who's, you know, whatever. Attacks are pretty easy to dodge. They're well telegraphed, but it's just a lot of, you know, hugging his butt and smacking his ass until he falls over and dies. But that third phase, the third phase is what makes this boss fight so fucking sick. Sister Frida comes back to life as Black Flame Frida, and she just becomes a fucking a faster, more aggressive, more engaging version of her first stage, which makes up for it because, you know, in the acts of the second phase, the boss arena opens up a lot more, giving you a lot more room to run around and dodge Frida. When I mean she's faster and aggressive, it's almost Bloodborne levels. Like, she never stops. She's constantly hunting you down, and you gotta fucking fight and bite and chew for every slight opening you get, which isn't a bad thing, you know. She really makes you work for your opportunities, which just makes beating her all the more satisfying and triumphant. Yeah, I mean, and, like, the best part is, you know, there's not really any moment in the game, and, like, the fight that feels bullshit. You know, a lot of bosses have one or two bullshit attacks that suck. But nothing about the Sister Frida fight feels unfair. Everything she does has a tell. There is a clear and ample opportunity to dodge. And if you die, it's your fault. You probably got greedy, or you fucked up your timing. And that should always be the reason why I die. I should either die because I should be dying because I'm making mistakes, either mental or physical. But yeah, she's amazing. I mean, only reason why I have her below. Oh man, I know. Okay. If I'm being objective here, she goes above Gundyr and Nameless King. Enjoyment levels, though, which is what I'm really ranking these off of, I'm gonna put her right below Nameless King, because as terrible as the King of Storms is, I can get through pretty quickly, and the Nameless King fight is so much fucking fun that it only barely brings it down. It only barely lets Champion Gundyr go above him. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention with Champion Gundyr, you can parry him. If you get good at parries, Gundyr unfortunately becomes a joke. But I'm too much of a pussy to try and parry a boss. I'll parry an ad 10 times out of 10. The second it becomes a boss fight, though, I don't know, mental hurdle I can't do. But yeah, no, Frida probably should be top of the list right now, but I'm putting her at third, because she's my third most enjoyable boss to fight so far. Up next, we got the Demon Princes from Peak, the Ring City. Just the best of the entire series. The Ring City is the best that all of Dark Souls has to offer. God, it's fucking perfect. I will say this about the Demon Princes fight. Well, before I get to the negatives, positives. I don't know. Something about the DLCs for FromSoft. They figured out how to do 2v1 fights. They figured out how to do gang fights in a fun and not actively miserable way. Because phase 1, you're fighting the Demon Princes. And the demon from the demon of pain and the demon from below. I think that's what their names are. And you're fighting two of them, but you're only ever actually engaging with one, because throughout the fight, one of them will kind of enter this enraged, flamed state, and, they'll be chasing you down, trying to whoop your ass, typical boss fight stuff, and the other one will be hanging back, and sometimes he'll shoot, like, this little, like, poisonous explosion attack at you, but it's never unfair, because right as they're doing the attack, it leaves like this little trail showing where the explosion is going to be, and that trail lingers for like a second, and then it all starts to explode. But it never interrupts your fight with the other demon prince, because you know it's coming. It doesn't catch you by surprise. It doesn't just, oh, my screen just fucking exploded. Oh, cool, that's awesome. I just died. You know it's coming. It gives you time to run away. And once that's over, the other demon prince goes back to kind of doing nothing, and you get to engage in the other one. And it's great. It's awesome. And then once you've defeated both demon princes, there's a second phase, and one of them rises with absorbs the strength of his brother, and then you fight the demon prince. And depending on which demon you killed first, it's identical except for like one super ultra attack one of them will get. One of them has like a big old laser beam, and the other one has an attack where like he like shoots like a bunch of meteors at you. The laser beam one's a lot easier to avoid. But I mean it's basically the same fight. And it's just more or less it's more or less the same of the first phase. They're just a little bit more aggressive and they hit a little bit harder. This used to be a fight that I would dread, not because I sucked at it, or not because I hated it, but because I sucked at it. It was this big old... He really was the gatekeeper to the Ring City for me. I couldn't engage in my favorite DLC because this dude would keep whooping my ass. I have since just... It's clicked. I can beat him pretty consistently now. I will say this, though. The boss has a little bit too much health. It goes on a little bit too long. Maybe if the Demon Prince had a little less health, or like the Twin Demons... I think it'd be better if the first phase, if the Twin Demons had a little bit less health. But you're having to cut through 3 health bars, like 3 full health bars, and it just, I don't know, that fight can last decently long. But really, that's my only negative to say about the Demon Prince. It lasts a little too long. But no, this is an S tier. I'm gonna put him right above Sister Frida. Objectively, Frida should be above, but fuck it, this is my list. Right below Nameless King. We are gonna have to make a new tier though, because oh, fucking goddamn it. Because up next we have my favorite fight in this entire franchise, Dark Ear Midir. Jesus Christ, where do I begin? He's a big old dragon fight. Dragons are badass. Dragons are sick. Unfortunately, though, Dark Souls doesn't have a great track record with dragons. I mean, every DLC has to have a big, cool, fuck-off dragon fight. Dark Souls 1 had Calamite, who's sick. Dark Souls 2 has Sin, who exists. But Dark Souls 3 has Midir. And with Midir, they finally figured out how to do a dragon fight. And then promptly forgot because none of the dragon fights in Elden Ring are this good, but that's neither here nor there. Dragon fights are most fun when you're attacking the dragons at the head. Because obviously if you hit them in the head, that's going to hurt a lot more than if you're just smacking away at their wrists. And the way Midir is designed, every single one of his attacks leaves his head open. If you dodge his attacks and stick with him, you have an abundantly clear and ample opportunities to hit him in the head. And like no other dragon fight does that. Like Calamite, if you only try to go for the head, you're gonna be there forever. Sin, you only try to go for the head, you're gonna be there forever. But with Midir, it's so clear that he is designed and encouraged for you to only go for the head. Like, yeah, you can attack nothing but Midir's wrists, but you have to actively go out of your way to fight him that way, and it's less fun. And, you know, like, and the entire time Midir fights, like the other dragons, they stand tall and proud like a mighty dragon, but Midir, he, like, clings low to the ground. His head is, like I said, it's never out of reach. It just, you know, his fight becomes this beautiful dance of dodging through his attacks, smacking his head, rinse, repeat. None of his attacks are bullshit. They're all well telegraphed. The only move he has that feels pretty fucking difficult to dodge, is one where he just, you know, he stands up on his hind legs and he breathes fire down. It's a move that all the dragons in the series have. And, you know, if you're trying to fight Midir the way you normally fight dragons, by, like, you know, hugging their crotch or just sticking to their legs and swinging away, that move is practically impossible to dodge and will probably kill you. But if you're fighting Midir the way you're supposed to, it's pitiful. You just take a few steps back and, you know, the fire misses you. And just, you know, it's baffling. It's honestly baffling, because they perfected dragon fights with Midir. They made the perfect one. They made the most fun fight, in my opinion, in the entire goddamn franchise. And then promptly threw away everything they learned with him in Elden Ring and went back to lame, shitty dragon fights where you can't attack the head. I fucking love Midir. He also has a big old fucking badass attack where, you know, he's shooting his fire around. He has a Shin Godzilla attack, goddammit. He shoots out this, you know, big old fucking stream of fire. He's got his regular old dragon fire attack. Before the fucking fire, you know, focuses to, like, a laser point. Like, he's shooting out a fucking laser from his mouth that, you know, he just fucking drags around, and it, you know, everywhere the laser hits, you know, causes, like, an explosion in its wake. It's literally just fucking Shin Godzilla's atomic breath from the movie. And I don't know if you know anything I know about me, Godzilla reference is a real fucking easy way to get 2 big ol' thumbs up in my book. I fucking love Midir. It's such a fucking good fight. This is everything a dragon fight should be in these games. Slight step down real quick, though. We got Half-Light. Half-Light's an NPC fight. There's a chance that if you're playing online that this will be an actual player and it becomes PvP. And then, you know, it depends on how you feel about PvP in the series. But I think being able to fight an actual other person, it's a lot more fun and rewarding than just fighting some lame NPC. But, you know, it's an NPC fight. It goes in C tier. I'll put it right above Champion Gravetender, purely because Half-Light uses, oh man, I can't remember the name. Hold on. What the fuck's it called? The Frayed Blade. That's another thing I should mention. When you beat Midir, you can transpose his soul. One of the things you can get from his soul transposition is a katana called the Frayed Blade, and that is my favorite weapon in that entire goddamn game. I fucking love it. It's this cool... It's a katana. Katanas are always good in these games because, you know, FromSoft has a clear bias to make katanas good. But it's this black katana that does dark damage. And its weapon art, you know, it's the standard katana sheath, and its R1 causes you to do, like, this quick little flurry of fucking blows that are sick, and then the R2, you slam the blade on the ground and you shoot, like, this wave of fucking dark energy. It's so much fun. I love that weapon, and Half-Light uses it in this fight, so I gotta give him props for using the coolest weapon in the game. We're gonna have to make another new tier, because it's kind of the same song and dance as Sister Frida, Salve. Yeah, we're just gonna call this the Sal tier. Because we have Slave Knight Gale. Now, if I'm being objective, Slave Knight Gale should go go above mid-tier. Slave Knight Gale is objectively the best boss fight FromSoft has ever made. I don't think they will ever top it. However, it's my list. It's based on my enjoyment. I like fighting mid-tier more than I like Gale. But enough about mid-tier. I've sung his praises enough. Slave Knight Gale. Oh my god, where do I even begin? This fight is perfect in every capacity. I'll go over his lore real quick. Gale is arguably the most important character in the entire series. He's a slave knight, and basically what that means is he was an undead who, he was cannon fodder. He was, you know, the most valuable cannon fodder because he could be flung at armies infinitely and he would never die. Well, he would die, but he would come back. And this dude is old. Like, slave knights are an old fucking concept. Like, this dude was fighting back in Gwyn's heyday. And, you know, eventually you find him, and he, you know, he's the one who brings you to the first DLC, to the Painted World of Ariandel. And he wants you to, like, you know, kill Frida because she's, you know, keeping the world locked in the stasis. She's not letting the Cinder come and burn away the world so that a new one can take its place. But then he takes you to the Ring City, because he, you know, he has his lady, this weird little, like, draconian little girl who's, you know, a painter who makes, like, you know, the painted worlds of, like, Ariandel and Ariamis, like those kinds of things. And he wants to help her paint a new world. He wants to help her make a new, perfect world. One that is everlasting, one that is immune to the rot that is spreading through Ariandel. And in order to do that, you know, he needs something that is everlasting, but a pigment, a paint that will never rot, that will never wither. And the only thing that's really, you know, everlasting, that's eternal in this series, is the dark soul of humanity. Because, you know, humans are the only things that are functionally immortal, to an extent, or at least undead are, you know. A lot of the humanoids you fight are hollows, and hollows are undeads who died so many times that they lost their mind and they lost their will to live. But as long as you have a will to live, a motive, a reason to keep going, like Gale does, undeads last forever. They will never go away. But anyways, he brings you to the Ring City, like a city gifted to humanity by Gwyn, which was actually kind of a prison because Gwyn's a raging piece of shit. I gotta wrap this up. I gotta go to work soon. Anyways, he leads you to the Ring City so that you can find the Dark Soul. And by the time you get to the end of the DLC, the Ring City literally takes place at the corner of the world. Like, you know, when you go into the Ring City, you are seeing the world fold in on itself. Because, you know, you're at the end of existence, pretty much. And at the end of the DLC, you get fast forward in time to literally the end of time. Like, when you're fighting Gale, there are 4 things still alive in the world. There's the Unkindled one, who got fast forward in time. I think her name's Shira, who's like an NPC who invades you, and there's why she was around. She was fueled by revenge. She wanted to kill you for killing Midir. There's a weird ringed knight who's just kind of hanging out around there. And then there's Gale, who has hunted down the Pygmy Kings, because he wants their dark soul. He wants to consume their dark soul, so that he can, you know, give the dark. He can make this dark the paint made with the dark soul to give to his lady. And then you fight him, and it's perfect. It's phenomenal. There's not a single thing about Gale's fight that is not constantly engaging, that is not actively fun, that is not, you know, harsh, but completely fair. Everything Gale does is well telegraphed, gives you an opening to follow up, and, you know, it's hard. It's hard as fuck, but at no point does it ever become bullshit. At no point does it ever become unreasonable for you to, you know, dodge and avoid and still attack. But as the fight goes on, he becomes more bestial. He begins to hollow. In fact, in his second and third phase, he literally becomes a hollow. And as Gale fights, you know, he starts off his fight very bestial. He's running around on his fucking hands and legs, he fights like a beast. But as he hollows, after, you know, realizing that he bears the Dark Soul has, you know, fused with his blood. Once he realizes that he has found the pigment that his lady needs, he goes hollow because he's finally accomplished his goal. And after Gale becomes hollow, he begins to fight more like a man. Because, you know, the entire series, you're told hollowing sucks, hollowing's awful, undeads are awful, they should be feared and locked up and put away because Gwen was scared of them. But once Gale goes hollow, once he has accomplished his goal, once he has, you know, nothing keeping him together, he begins to behave like a man. And it's, oh my god, it's one of those things where it's just, you know, small little subtleties and how the boss moves and behaves, doing better storytelling than other AAA games could ever even dream of doing. Also, he's just a massive Guts reference. He's this big lumbering man with a big old fucking sword. He's got a repeating crossbow. Listen, Miyazaki's based because he loves Berserk just as much as I do, and it's all over this goddamn series. And at no point has Miyazaki been less subtle about his Berserk references than the fucking fight with Slave Knight Gale. You're literally just fucking fighting Guts from the manga. And there's so many small little details with Gale that are sick. Like, you know, everyone's talked about it to death at this point, but, you know, you don't really see Gale running around. Like, if you get too far away, he just teleports to you, and he teleports, using the wipe soapstones. And it's, oh my god, literally everything about this fight is perfect. Literally every single detail. Miyazaki put his fucking heart and soul into this goddamn fight. Maybe that's why nothing in Elden Ring's quite as good as this. But holy shit, man. It's, objectively speaking, it should go like this. But I'm not objective, I'm me. Meteor's more fun for me. I can't. It's so fucking good. Slave Knight Gale is literally the best thing FromSoft has ever made, but Meteor's my favorite thing they've ever made, if that makes any fucking sense. But I have been talking about this bullshit for an hour and a half now, and I gotta go to work, like, now, so hopefully I have time to upload this video, and I'm not a fraud. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, see y'all next week. Peace.